we will see the threat of severe thunderstorms. From Kansas City down into northeastern Texas, that's our enhanced risk. That's going to be the bulk of the activity. This cell has been severe thunderstorm warned for quite some time now, and we are looking at wind gusts upwards of 60 miles per hour and hail up to 1.25 inches. So think $half size hail. Low pressure right here, and it tracks farther out to sea. That would mean more snow along some of those coastal areas. But if our low tracks closer inland, that would push a lot of that snow farther inland. We'd see a lot more rain along some of those coastal areas. So we're seeing these bands still continue. Notice they are very narrow bands. So many areas are seeing some incredibly heavy snow, but just a few miles away, that snow is almost non-existent. In the coming days, this thing really starts to get itself together and really starts to develop. As all of these snow showers move into the Rockies of Colorado, the low itself will start making its way out into the plains and develop into what we call a Colorado low. Very, very classic Colorado low here. And here's that trough that we were talking about. Looking at digging all the way to the south, and that's really what's going to help support this whole storm system as it makes its way out into the plains. A whole lot of snow on the backside of this is how this thing starts to unfold. It moves out into the plains, but look at what we have going on. From the plains of Colorado straight on through the upper Midwest, we start to feel the cold behind this. This is where temperatures are going to plummet. Chris talked about that plummet in the northwest, but then that's going to make its way south. We have upper level low. That's going to cut off, and that's also going to add support to it. Let's say you're out in the plains, central Mississippi Valley. You're going to start to feel those above average temperatures. You're going from really cold to really warm, and you're even going to feel some humidity along with this. So as this low starts making its way out, we are going to see rain out in front of it, out in front of that cold front as well. On the northern end, where we have this warm front, we're even going to see a wintry mix as far north as northern Iowa, southern Wisconsin, and even central Michigan. It's going to be that warm that far north in January. Minneapolis looks to be on the brunt of this storm on the early model runs. Now we're a couple days out. We still have some kinks to iron out with this forecast, but in general, this low is expected to make its way across the Great Lakes, and then right along that cold front, that's where we're getting the rain. On the northern end, snow, a wintry mix along it, and then wrapping around some very cold air on the backside of this. So as we get into Monday, we're looking at that making its way out toward the coast, and this is going to be a big weather maker as we get into the weekend and early next week. And something we are going to start to focus our energy on, because this is a classic Colorado low making its way out to the coast and dumping quite a bit of snow along with it. We have much more information on this and our other top weather stories on weathernationtv.com. This is our dry line. We call it a dry line because look at this, it is dry. This area out in front of the dry line is where we have that warm, moist air. This is where your shirt feels sticky, where it's sticking to you, and you're going, oh, it's a hot, muggy day. Back behind it, this is that dry heat you always hear people talking about, going, yeah, it's dry, and it's not as bad as that humidity. That's actually the case. But that dry boundary is going to be between that dry, warm air and back off to the east, it's going to be that moist, humid air. Now, what's going to happen is that line is going to progress, and that's going to actually be what causes the lift in the atmosphere, because notice our cold air is still way back behind it. That's not going to be where those storms fire off. Instead, they're firing off along that dry line, and that's what's going to give us some of those thunderstorms throughout the day. So cool and dry, warm and dry, warm and moist. It's three different air masses, and right in the middle, this is where things get interesting throughout the day on Friday, because warm, dry air is actually much heavier than warm, wet air. I know it sounds weird and different, but that's actually the case. So we do have that risk of severe weather stretching from Iowa all the way down to the Gulf Coast. And this area right here, our enhanced risk, the orange shaded area, it's a 3 out of 5 on the scale of severe weather, and that's where we're going to see most of those storms. So here's your enhanced risk area where we're looking at those storms. Notice it's all along our brown line there, and that's where we get a lot of those. By Saturday, it actually shifts back toward the cold front and becomes more of a straight line wind event along that cold front as it all advances off to the east. And boy, oh boy, does this do a number to those temperatures. Look at that cold air moving in. But keep in mind, This happens well after that severe weather. This is all associated with that cold front. And that cold air, that means a lot of snow. We're gonna take you out to Jackson, Wyoming coming up and tell you about what a difference a day will make across much of the high plains as all the snow moves its way on in.
Carolina. Jeremy, this storm is huge. It's already packing a punch, and it could really devastate Florida.
Yeah, absolutely, Matt, especially with the projected track. And let's go ahead and break down what exactly that means for some folks in the path of this storm. Now, you're looking at what we call the forecast cone. And the reason it's a cone of uncertainty. The hurricane could track to either side of this. It doesn't really matter about that middle line. It can go anywhere within that projected path. And as the storm itself moves into Florida, it could still move over to the east. It could still move farther to the west. And there are some atmospheric conditions at play that bring us this forecast. So let's go ahead and talk about a few of those and break down exactly what that means for folks in the area. We have what we call a Bermuda high, a massive ridge of high pressure out over the open waters of the Atlantic. Back inland, we have our mid-level trough. It's a jet stream, if you will. It's the atmospheric river that steers our weather patterns here in the mainland of the U.S. This is what brings us that fall-like chill in the air for a lot of folks across the Northeast, and even some of those frost advisories up across the upper Midwest. Now, as this mid-level trough moves its way to the east, what it's going to do is break down this Bermuda high. So the Bermuda high itself is also going to move to the east and weaken as well. So when we put things in motion, you'll see exactly what I mean. Now watch the eastern side of your screen. This right here is that Bermuda high. It's now moving out. Back behind it, we get this nice trough, and that's digging its way in, but that's also acting to push that Bermuda high away. Right here is our big player in this whole thing. Once that Bermuda high moves out, that's that western force that's moving Irma to the west. But once this comes into play, these winds right here are going to be really what starts to steer Irma in more of a northerly direction. That northern steer is going to give us the projected path that now turns Irma into scooting almost directly up the Florida coast and bringing some of those incredibly devastating impacts to folks down in Florida. For that reason, we have field correspondents in place across much of the Sunshine State to bring us the latest, and that will continue here in just a bit. Do they need some help? I'll just go ahead and take off the coat here, and I'm ready to go take on a gator. Bring that thing on. I'm ready for this.
Little six foot Jeremy here taking on a 6-foot gator.
6-foot Jeremy, look at these pythons. Those pythons can take on a gator. I mean, we've all seen it, right? No? I've watched a lot of Animal Planet back in my day.
All right, viewers, if you think Jeremy could take on a gator, and if you're willing to pay money to see it, just go ahead and tweet us or send us a message on Facebook.
Twitter, Facebook, can Jeremy beat a gator? We're going to take a viewer poll. Let us know.
Hashtag Jeremy versus Gator.